going to start with Senator Quarterman, then we'll take Senator Guile. Senator Quarterman on Senate Bill 1024. You are the lone witness, and you can proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Paul Quarterman, District 2, representing Washington and Frederick counties. Thank you for the opportunity today to present Senate Bill 1024, the Maryland Fallen Heroes Tuition Benefits Act. Colleagues, this legislation would offer a new death benefit for Maryland's public safety professionals who perish in the line of duty. Understanding this was a late file bill, sponsor only. Original intent was we were going to have Sarah Laird join us today. She is the widow of Battalion Chief Josh Laird, who was killed in the line of duty in Frederick County. However, though, today in the gallery we do have Stephen Jones, president of the Career Firefighters Association of Frederick County, IAFF Local 3666. Frederick County's public employee organization represents over 600 men and women employed in the Frederick County Division of Fire and Rescue. For those of you who may not be aware, Battalion Chief Laird died in the line of duty on Wednesday, August 11th, 2021, by battling a house fire. He was a 21-year veteran of the department and was assigned to the Green Valley Fire Station 25 in Monrovia, Maryland. Losing Battalion Chief Laird in the line of duty was a devastating blow to not only the department, but our community, and most importantly, his family. This legislation is a way that we can look after them and help them prepare for their future. Josh gave his life, protected the people of Frederick County, embodying the bravery and selflessness that defines fire service. His sacrifice should not be forgotten, and his family should not have to struggle for the support that they deserve. Josh's children lost their father that day, and while they may not reside in Maryland, their loss is no less significant, and their future should not be any less secure. The state of Maryland has long recognized the importance of honoring fallen firefighters and first responders by providing in-state tuition benefits to their dependents. This should not be limited by geography. Josh laid down his life for our state, and Maryland in return should stand by his family. Providing in-state tuition benefits to Josh's children is not just an act of gratitude, it is a commitment to those who put their lives on the line for Marylanders each and every day. This legislation was introduced to ensure that the families of our fallen heroes, regardless of where they live, are given every opportunity to succeed. Battalion Chief Laird gave everything for Maryland. Senate Bill 1024 is one step that we can take for Maryland to give back to his family. And with that, we would ask for a favorable report on Senate Bill 1024.
Okay, thank you, Senator. Any questions for Senator Quarterman? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 1024. Thank you, Senator, for the bill.
Thank you.
We'll go to Senator Guile next, 1028. Senator Guile.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Senator Don Guile here to present Senate Bill 1028. This bill requires gasoline-powered vessels in Maryland waters to display carbon monoxide warning labels on both the transom and the helm. This bill honors Matthew McHale, a young constituent from District 33 who tragically lost his life in 2016 due to carbon monoxide poisoning on a boat. And Mr. McHale's family is behind me, have joined today. They also brought a photograph of Mr. McHale. I just wanted to provide a little bit of background. Matthew died on November 5th, 2016, when he was only 25 years old. At the time, he was working for Prestige Yacht Club in Annapolis. He was in the process of winterizing a twin inboard vessel that had already been shrink wrapped. After letting his supervisor know that he was starting to feel dizzy while taking a break, he went back to the boat to turn off that engine. At that point, he passed out. Later that evening, he was found deceased, and it was determined that he had been exposed to carbon monoxide. As we know, carbon monoxide is a colorless, odorless, and tasteless gas produced when carbon-based fuels such as gasoline burn. On boats, carbon monoxide can accumulate in enclosed areas, near blocked exhaust outlets, or even in open spaces due to the station wagon effect, where exhaust gases are pulled back into a vessel. It can also drift from nearby boats or docks, creating invisible dangers. Carbon monoxide poisoning symptoms, headache, dizziness, nausea, and weakness are often mistaken for seasickness or intoxication, leading to delays in seeking medical attention. Tragically, exposure can be fatal, even small doses over time, in a single high-concentration incident. Each year, over 400 Americans die from unintentional carbon monoxide poisoning, more than 100,000 visit emergency rooms, and over 14,000 are hospitalized. Carbon monoxide exposure is as much a risk on water as it is on land, yet awareness of boating-related carbon monoxide poisoning remains low. Maryland is home to one of the nation's most active boating communities. I'm proud to represent both sides of the Severn River and also parts of the Magathie River, where people spend a lot of their times out on the water. Other states, including Minnesota and Oklahoma, have enacted similar laws requiring carbon monoxide warning label on boats. These measures have raised awareness and saved lives. Senate Bill 1028 was developed with input from key stakeholders, including the Department of Natural Resources, the American Boat and Yacht Council, and members of Maryland's boating industry. The American Boat and Yacht Council, headquartered in Annapolis, the sailing capital of the world, is a national leader in boat safety standards. Maryland is well positioned to build on the success of other states to protect boaters from carbon monoxide dangers. To ensure a targeted and practical approach, I've requested 2 sponsor amendments. The first is clarifying that the label requirements apply only to vessels manufactured after July 31st, 2007. The other amendment is naming this bill's Matthews Law in honor of Matthew McHale. Having introduced earlier versions of this bill, I'd also like to thank my predecessor, Senator Ed Riley, for his leadership on this issue. This bill takes a simple but critical step in preventing carbon monoxide poisoning on boats. As in addition to the existing State Boat Act, it aligns with Maryland's commitment to water safety and education without requiring additional state resources, as noted in the fiscal note. And for these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 1028. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you, Senator Guile, for this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Guile. I actually, as you were starting, I said, oh my gosh, I think this was a Senator Riley bill, and I just sent him a note. So the fiscal note said that it hasn't been introduced in the past several years and stuff. Can you just remind us, and I'm so sorry for your loss of Matthew, you guys. Could you just remind us what the journey is? Why isn't this law yet? Did it pass the Senate, pass the House? What's the?
It did not. I'm here for the family behind me. There were some changes to it. This is just merely a warning label. I know that Senator Riley had some requirements regarding winterization and when they could do it, things of that nature. I think there was some restrictions specific to the boating industry regarding the winterization, that whole process. This is purely a warning label that we worked with DNR on. So thank you for that question, Madam Vice Chair.
Okay, Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Senator. Now, in the bill, it says all persons may not operate a gasoline-powered vehicle. What about diesel? Would that be included? For some, I guess some boats do use diesel engines.
That's a good question. I mean, I'd be open to, including an amendment if warranted. For that purpose, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Not being as familiar.
Yeah, okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Okay, any additional questions for Senator Guile? Okay, thank you, Senator, and thank you to the O'Malleys for coming today. That concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 1028. And Senator Folden, you're up next. We're going to go to Senate Bill 737. Is Joanne Frederick here? Is Ms. Frederick here? Okay. Do you know if Ms. Frederick is planning to attend today? She signed up favorable.
I do not. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. So Senate Bill 737, and you are therefore the only witness, so you can proceed.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed colleagues, I'm here to present Senate Bill 737, the Property Rights Protection Act of 2025. This bill is a crucial step in safeguarding the property rights of Maryland residents, particularly in light of large-scale infrastructure projects like the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, MPRP. The MPRP, a proposed 70-mile, 500,000-volt transmission line, has raised significant concerns amongst landowners and communities due to its potential impact on the property rights, the environment, and local communities. Some key provisions of SB 737 would be the prohibition on the condemnation for power lines and generating stations. SB 737 would prevent electric companies from using the condemnation to acquire private property for the construction of power lines or generation stations. This is essential to protect homeowners and landowners from losing their property against their will. Number two, the repeal of the condemnation authority for the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, the CPCN holders. The bill repeals the authority for a person who has obtained a CPCN from the Public Service Commission to exercise a right of condemnation when constructing an overhead transmission line. This ensures that even those with CPCNs cannot forcibly acquire property for such projects. The protection of conservation easements, the bill also ensures that properties with conservation easements are not subject to condemnation for the construction of power line infrastructure. This is a vital component for preserving Maryland's natural landscape and biodiversity. And another final point is that respect for local governance. SB 737 requires electric companies to obtain consent from local governing bodies before constructing new power lines, ensuring that local communities have a say in such significant projects. And this is something that has recently happened, obviously, in Frederick County and Baltimore County, I believe Carroll County as well, where even the legislators were only made aware of MPRP's intent to potentially take land from homeowners about 2 weeks before they decided to host a community forum. And their community forum was housed in silos. There was about 7 or 8 different stations, and they were all supposed to put out the same thing. But if you went to different silos and you asked different questions, that opportunity to have that think tank environment to hear what was being said or questioned by others was drastically limited, thereby limiting their voice. This is not how this process should be or was supposed to be. We wanted to have an open think tank process to allow the community to engage, and maybe something that someone else asks would be something to trigger a thought process of another to make a better end product. This did not happen in this process. It was completely stifled and limiting, which then we ended up having to host our own community forum in a matter of about 2 weeks later, and we had 1,000 people show up to ask questions and hear concerns. And this was a pattern of through the summer and through the fall in these affected areas. In addressing the concerns raised by the MPRP, the unfair financial burden and out-of-state interest, the MPRP primarily serves out-of-state corporations, forcing Marylanders to shoulder a significant portion of its $424 million project cost. The project is designed to transport electricity from Pennsylvania to Northern Virginia, largely bypassing Maryland's needs. At the time, I believe that Frederick County was going to be provided with less than 3% of the usage, even though it was going to endure the most significant encumbrance on the property owners. This places an unnecessary financial strain on Maryland's residents and businesses without providing direct benefits. It was also noted that the power companies had made the point to ensure that everybody knew that this was not going to be the Marylanders paying for this, but conceded that it's going to be an end rate user fee, that there was no upfront costs, yes, but it was always going to be an end rate user fee. So Marylanders were going to pay for it, and we're going to get a disproportionate amount of actual energy available to them, even though they were going to be paying for it because of their geographic region within this part of the grid. The outdated infrastructure, MPRP relies on outdated infrastructure that poses unnecessary risk to the environment and communities. SB 737 encourages the exploration of more sustainable and efficient alternatives, such as upgrading existing infrastructure or adopting modern technologies that do not require new land acquisitions. The lack of a comprehensive energy planning has been spoken about ad nauseum regarding the MPRP project. Maryland lacks a well-integrated energy plan, leading to fragmented decision-making and disconnected policies. SB 737 promotes a unified vision that balances economic development and environmental preservation and the well-being of its residents. The threats to landowners and agriculture, the MPRP would require permanent easements on private properties, disrupting landowners' lives and businesses with the installation of 140-foot tall transmission towers. This threatens Maryland's farmers, essential to the region's food security and economy, by stripping them of valuable agricultural land. The Maryland Farm Bureau has voiced strong opposition to the MPRP, highlighting that over 25 members could be directly affected, with an estimated 1,300 acres of farmland at risk. This loss could have serious implications for local food supply and worsen food security problems. And lastly, environmental and landscape preservation. The MPRP poses a serious threat to Maryland's natural beauty, cutting through farmlands, conservation areas, and historic sites. The project threatens 4,000 acres of land, including forest farmland, wildlife habitats with long-term environmental damage. The Maryland Farm Bureau has emphasized the importance of preserving agricultural land and preventing its conversion into industrial sites. The passage of SB 737 will provide much-needed assurance to Maryland property owners that their rights are protected. It strikes a balance between the need for infrastructure development and preservation of individual property rights and environmental conservation. By enacting SB 737, Maryland takes a definitive stand in prioritizing the rights of its residents and the preservation of its cherished lands over the interest of expansive infrastructure developments. I urge the committee's favorable report on SB 737, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay, any questions for Senator Fulton, sponsor of the bill? Senate Bill 737. Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 737. Thank you, Senator Fulton.
Man, I should come in like beat up a little more often, Mr. Chairman. I don't ask anything.
I know, simple. Okay, we're going to next go to Senator Mary Washington on Senate Bill 461. Senator, I've got, speaking of which, Ed Riley signed up. I don't know that the former senator's here, but he is part of the list of witnesses who signed up favorable. David Wheaton, Evan Isaacson,
Mr. Chair, I don't think they're,
Todd Logston.
unless you have, thank you, Mr. Chair, unless there are people online, I think it's just,
We have one virtual witness, Antoinette Ryan Johnson.
okay.
She's not in the queue, so it sounds like it's your baby.
Yes,
Senate Bill
yes.
461.
Yes. Thank you, colleagues. For the record, I'm Senator Mary Washington, here to present Senate Bill 461. And the bill proposes updates to the Maryland Water Quality Revolving Loan Fund. I'll just say that this bill addresses a loan fund that is almost entirely, except for any subsidization from the state, funded by federal funds. So my position around forwarding the bill and, has adjusted. So I'm having the hearing to talk about should there come a time when we're able to do this, but I'll just talk about what the bill aims to do for your information. What the fund seeks to do is to broaden the scope of the projects that are eligible for funding and to align the fund's administration with sort of evolving watershed and water infrastructure challenges. It really aims to look at the financing so that it can be responsive to the needs of our water systems, of stormwater management, and technical assistance. The fund was established many years ago, and in light of climate change, in light of various different types of challenges that communities are having, we wanted to expand the eligible products. Additionally, the bill was initially brought to me because there had been an analysis provided that looked at how, with regard to this fund, Maryland disproportionately funds water infrastructure in areas that are demographically whiter than others. And there was one finding of whiter, much more CWSRF funding from 20 to 22, and it shows a distribution of the state. There's also a larger share, so the number of projects that were funded is greater. There's also a larger share of all the proposals that are funded occur in those areas. So even within Baltimore area, the areas of the city that are whiter would get more projects approved. Additionally, it brought, it particularly affects my jurisdiction, but there are other jurisdictions. But Baltimore had applied for more than $300 million, but in 2021 of projects, and I'm sure you all are very aware of the water infrastructure challenges in the city, and yet nothing was funded. So since it's a loan program, I looked at what are the criteria and what do other states do. Every state has this water improvement fund. So I looked at what other states do, and as I think I told you that I'm a member of the watershed, the Chesapeake Bay Watershed Commission, and I spoke with people in Virginia and Pennsylvania, and they actually have expanded criteria for people to apply. And so what I sought to do in the bill was to, well, let's look at how are we currently fund, and we've done this in other spaces, and said how can we add additional factors, not remove the current ones, but how do we add additional factors. So again, on page 5, you'll see the additional types of eligible spaces in which the projects could occur. And additionally, I thought, well, if people are applying and they're getting denied, perhaps the department should offer some technical assistance or kind of give people feedback, or jurisdictions or municipalities feedback about, why they're having a problem, and try to address those problems. The reference of disadvantaged and overburdened already occurs, in this section of the code, so that's not a new item. So given that, I said, well, let's look at a scoring system that takes into consideration, in addition to ability to repay or having been awarded past grants of this size. Let's take into account the economic distress. Let's take into account if there's a high environmental burden. Does the state somehow have a real interest in fixing the problems that are occurring in this area? Also, making sure that the department, in reviewing the applications, reviews and considers how does it align with our state laws and goals involving climate change, flood mitigation, and water quality. So again, that's what the bill was seeking to do, just expand the definitions. I want to, again, just for the record, address some of the concerns that were registered by the department, which, in terms of this being federal law and looking at making sure that there's no conflict with EPA, I agree with that. And then secondly, however, it sort of implies that Maryland doesn't have the authority to make any kind of adjustments to how they award or score their our loan program, and that's simply not true. The funds consist of both federal funds and state funds, and there are no restrictions or specific prohibitions against changing the scoring systems that I could find anywhere in the law. So again, I just wanted to put this bill forward that as an opportunity for us to think about looking at how our loan programs work, looking at the distribution of our grant programs, and seeing how we can actually operationalize these concepts of overburdened or environmental justice and ground them into some of the more material conditions why people aren't eligible or why municipalities or small jurisdictions or rural jurisdictions aren't getting these funds. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but.
Okay, Senator Carosa has a question.
Thank you. You will always catch my attention when we're talking about these water systems, especially in the small municipalities. So I was trying to look at the intention of the bill and the additions that you pointed to on page 5.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the letter of information from the Maryland Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies. I have Berlin, Ocean City, Pocomoke City, Somerset County, and Salisbury, so I'm really affected by this. So I'm really trying to understand what the bill, how it would expand options, especially for the smaller municipalities. At the same time, I'm sensitive to their letter of information, which raises a question of whether it would cause any confusion to the existing list. So that's what I'm trying to navigate with the bill.
Yeah. Thank you. And then there was another implication that there was a special allocation dedicated to particular groups and to overburdens. That's not the case. Prioritizing and prioritizing for review does not guarantee a prioritization for funding. So that's the one thing I definitely want to address. And if the term prioritize is problematic, then, should we take this up, we definitely, could look at using a different word. But it already exists in existing law that the administration, that the Water Quality Fund Administration will provide assistance to, they say, disadvantaged communities that have been disproportionately impacted. So there's already been that focus. And then I don't really know where it says prioritize funding. I think when it's, okay, so each year the state or the Water Loan Administration has to put forward a plan. And this is supposed to be prior to any funding, any requests for funding are put out. And so this bill would say, hey, include some priority projects, some projects that are, or think about these projects where you have these decentralized wastewater systems, right? That should absolutely help, rural areas. Consider areas where people need technical assistance. So I don't read it as requiring that these projects are considered above, but, there's, yeah, but, so I don't really
is
get
it, so the intention of the bill would be that the fund would continue to provide support for the existing projects already in law.
Of course.
In addition, with this bill, that it would allow for the use of those funds in these other projects, and then you go down the list on page 5. Is that the intention?
Yes, and on page 6, I think where the confusion about priority, this is saying that the scoring system, right, should look at these things and see how it can add or help projects that are in these types of areas. So you see lines 2 to 7, it's saying, look, do they have insufficient infrastructure? Add that as one of the qualities of the criteria. Is it a high environmental burden? Add that. It doesn't replace any of the existing, it just adds additional ways to try to balance the fact that there are municipalities that have quite a lot of money. And they are able to get the projects. So if the only criteria for awarding the loans is ability to repay, then the areas that perhaps probably need it the most, which could be a small municipality, don't really have much of a chance. So that's what this, the adjusting the scoring system,
And just
rather
one
than
last
talking
question, Mr.
about the
Chair.
allocation.
So just one last question. So
Yeah.
looking at, obviously at the top of the list, the city of Baltimore is at the top of the list for the Maryland Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies, along with the range from Salisbury to Ocean City, and then even my smaller ones like, town of Berlin.
Right.
So from this, was this association involved in the development of this bill?
I would say that's absolutely a fair. This came from, one, looking at the distribution of the funds and seeing that certain areas, like the one I represent, has very significant needs and seems to never qualify. And then looking at a broader, that even within the state itself, there just seems to be certain projects and areas that get the money. And again, seeking a way to, rather than saying 40% of this money, which is what we've done in the past in other places, why don't we just look at the criteria? I mean, people need to meet the criteria, so maybe we can expand the criteria. So the criteria is informed by sort of the research about how to make funding systems and applications more equitable. And one of the ways to do that is to consider qualifications or considerations other than simply the ability to repay the loan.
Okay, I think I better understand. Thank you.
Yeah.
Additional questions for Senator Washington? Yeah, so Johnny Ray Salling is joining us from the Budget and Tax Committee. This bill is
And
jointly
my
signed.
Baltimore County colleague.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Chairman.
Senator Salling?
Just one question real quick, because I see here that there were certain people that did apply for this and were denied. And so knowing that, is this bill stating that those that were denied have the opportunity to reapply and see if they can be a part of the priority list?
So, no, but what it does do, Senator, is in section 17, it does direct the department to offer technical assistance or to reach out to those entities that seem to keep, not being able to succeed in their bid and find out how they can help them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on
Thank
Senate
you.
Bill 461. We're going to next go to Howard County. Senator Hester, are you going to present Bill 968? And then I think the other two will be Senator Lamb, I take it. But Senate Bill 968, we've got 3 folks signed up to be on your panel: Crystal Broom Pickett. We have 2 virtual witnesses also, and then is Emily Wilson, is one of you? Okay. Okay, we'll take the panel here, and then we'll go to our 2 virtual witnesses, and that'll be it for this bill. But Senator Hester, Senate Bill 968, on behalf of the Howard County Senators.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the EEE Committee, for your consideration of Senate Bill 968, which aims to balance environmental preservation with public safety by ensuring trail maintenance within the Patuxent wildland. This is a local bill, and it's been something that I've been working on for like 3 years with local residents. Currently, the trails within the wildland have become overgrown and increasingly unsafe. Due to existing restrictions on using motorized equipment in these designated wildlands, routine trail maintenance has been limited. And as a result, the trails have become overgrown and pose a risk not only to the park visitors, but also to the first responders whose access in emergency situations is hindered. Recognizing the urgency of this issue, my office began working with DNR before last year to find a solution. And in February, DNR verbally agreed to enter into an MOU with the Howard County Iron Bridge Hounds, which would have allowed them to maintain trails for emergency access under the supervision of DNR. That was February of last year, colleagues. At this time, we did not believe legislation was necessary. However, unforeseen legal challenges withheld DNR from granting this authorization to use the motorized equipment to maintain the trails. And so the bill before you ensures that the Patuxent wildlands remain protected while allowing emergency access to trails in the worst-case scenarios. Specifically, this bill allows DNR to enter into agreements with those volunteers to facilitate the use of motorized vehicles, such as an ATV, to get into the wildland for the sole purpose of maintaining only the existing trails to ensure clear and safe access. This legislation reflects the concerns of my constituents, many of whom have written in to express their support for a practical solution, and passing this legislation will allow park goers to continue to enjoy hiking, hunting, horseback riding, while safely by maintaining existing trails. For these reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on Senate Bill 968.
Okay, let's go to our two in-person witnesses who are on up to the 2-minute clock. And so tell us your name, and you're signed up favorable, and actually a favorable with amendment witness. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Senator Hester. My name is Crystal Pickett, and I have been before you as a member of the Maryland Horse Council and as a member of the Maryland Association of Wildlife Conservation. But today, I am here on this local issue. I am here as a user of the Patuxent Wildlands, as someone who, when I was with Howard County Iron Bridge Hounds in 2017, had to get one of my riders, who had been knocked unconscious, out of the woods and into the waiting medevac, which took well over an hour, which is unacceptable. Thankfully, she was okay. In the process, I learned from the chief of our local fire department, Carrie McIntosh, who was supposed to be here today but cannot, that this is not an unusual situation. The hunter injured from a fall from a deer stand, the accidental shooting of one hunter by another, the hiker with the injured ankle who couldn't walk, the hunter with the chest pains, the hiker lost and dehydrated. The list goes on. Patients that need immediate care spend hours in the park before being located and moved to ambulances or medevac units. I learned that it's not uncommon for the first responders to carry in chainsaws, but that steals precious time from the patient. The fire company has offered to work with DNR, but they have never responded to the fire company. DNR did do some emergency clearing of access trails this past October, but they did not reach out to the fire company to determine the crucial trailheads needed for first responders. The Lisbon Volunteer Fire Company stands ready to work with DNR. It supports the language in Senator Hester's bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go to our next witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam
And just
Vice
to
Chair.
clarify, it's not Senator Hester's bill. This is on behalf of the Howard County Senators, correct? Okay. Anyway, back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for having me today. My name is Emily Wilson. I'm with the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. We are here favorable with amendments on this bill. We have provided the amendments with our bill report. We are very gracious and very thankful for the continued dialogue and the continued patience, honestly, with the senator and with the constituents. Let me just explain what our amendments do. So the way the bill's written, it's to the wildland statute in toto. This issue is more specific to Patuxent River wildlands. And so our amendments write this specifically to that part of the statute that deal with Patuxent River wildlands. And please try not to be alarmed at what may seem like lengthy amendments. The way the wildland statute is drafted is all of the metes and the bounds of each wildland is in statute. So we lifted the part of the statute of Patuxent River wildlands into our amendments, and then really the crux of these amendments are that last paragraph, which is also lifted from an existing part of a different wildland of statute that will allow us to work with volunteers to use motorized and mechanized equipment to assist in these emergency situations for emergency access. We absolutely recognize the need for that. It is a bit of a needle to thread, but it's certainly something that we can do and that we would look forward to working more formally with these groups on this.
Thank you. Any questions for Senator Hester or the panel? Senator Augustine and then Senator Carrozza.
Thank you. Glad to hear that the department and the Howard County is comfortable with you all have worked together with the department and departments. I guess I'm asking the Howard County sponsor. You all are comfortable with the amendments that are from the department?
Yes, we are.
Okay. And then, just from my understanding, because we've been having conversations about these wildlands in other areas, was there the only thing that we are doing is having mechanized vehicles in these very sensitive areas? Is that really all that this is doing?
Well, the way we envision it is it would be formalized in an MOU. We would supervise the work, and we could work with the fire,
Okay,
the
so
local
work-
fire company.
So work is different. So is it actually clearing?
It can be, if there is a need for that, and that's why I said it's a bit of a needle to thread, because we recognize these are wildlands.
Okay.
But we
And
also
so
recognize the
Are we talking
need.
about invasive species? Are we talking about, I mean, is there any specification on that since we're in the wildlands?
Right, invasive species, certainly. We have done this in the Parkers Creek
Well, no,
wildland.
I know. Well, Parkers Creek is a great place. I love it there. But Parkers Creek notwithstanding, that's not, I'm asking, are we talking about potentially taking natives out of this pristine area? Well, I'm asking the department.
No, that's not what we're looking at here. This is going to be very specific and very limited. Again, these are wildlands, so if a tree falls, a tree falls. But if it's such, a tree that's like this large that it is going to impede emergency access, and the local volunteer fire company comes to us and talks with us about the need to remove that, then we could do that in that instance.
Okay, I'm very comfortable with it, but I'm just trying to get to the bottom of it, honestly and truly. Have you heard from Maryland League of Conservation voters about this? Because we're in a very sensitive area. I mean, it's the wildlands. They seem to get very, when we start doing things in those spaces. Have we heard anything from them on this?
We have not.
Okay, thank you.
But if I might, just to reiterate, the language that we are suggesting in the amendment already exists in a different part of the wildland statute, specific actually to Parkers Creek.
Yeah.
So we lifted that existing language and are now putting that in the section of the code that is specific to Patuxent River wildlands.
No, and I completely appreciate and understand that. I'm just saying that we've had a certain level of sensitivity as it relates to anything, as you said.
Right.
When you start going into that which has been designated as wildlands, the most sensitive that we have in our state. That's all that I'm saying. I'm asking that question along those lines.
Yes, and this is different than, we have friends of groups all over the state with our state lands. And we oftentimes have work days with friends of groups where they come with mechanized equipment. A lot of them go through training through DNR to use chainsaws on DNR lands and so forth. And they come for the specific reason of opening up trails and clearing trails.
But
for
wildlands are
recreational.
different.
No, this is just for recreational
Right,
access.
that's what I'm thinking.
This in the wildlands it's not going to be like that. This is going to be much more specific and tailored.
No, I understand, but I just was just making sure that it wasn't confusing the distinction between wildlands and other state lands. So
Right.
there are more restrictions in the wildlands.
For sure.
And that's all that I was just trying to be clear on. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Carozza?
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Wilson, for that response. I think it helped clarify my questions. You already there's already the authority when it comes to these emergency situations with non-wildlands, the agreements that you already have with different organizations to clear, correct?
Well, yes, we can enter into memorandums of understanding with like friends groups, like I was saying, if they do like trail work days and things like that.
Right, so what's different here is it's the wildlands and it's specific to Howard County. My question is, if there's similar situations, I mean, look at my district, Somerset County, and, and where I have other wildlands, and there's similar concerns, would we approach you about that very limited use as well?
I think we could have that discussion.
Okay, because I really see this as as a safety issue and used on a very limited basis with DNR all over it as far as limiting it, but I just wanted to kind of I just didn't realize that it would take state legislation to, maybe provide what I'm thinking is, safety measures. So I just wanted to better understand that. You're saying yes, and this would be done on a limited basis per local issue. Okay.
Okay, we actually do have one additional witness, kind of late. Is Alan Dinerman here? Yes, Alan, why don't you come up? You're also signed up favorable, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got up to 2 minutes to weigh in here, and
I
then
don't
we'll
think I'll need 2 minutes.
get to our two virtual witnesses, and that'll be the extent of the testimony.
Thank you for letting me be here and to testify. And I'm here to support this bill. And again, I want to echo what has been said. This is really about safety. And the best way I can describe this, I spoke with a member of Fire and Rescue Station 17, David Pettinger, and he explained two things to me, that often when there is a 911 call in the wildlands, various fire stations have to respond, and they need to respond because there's some teams that have to go in and do the clearing, and some teams that have to go in and provide the EMT services. And he explained one situation to me that happened last year, that a woman was in the wildlands and she had a prosthetic. She came upon a tree fall. She was walking her dogs. She came upon a tree fall. She got caught up in the bramble of all of the branches and couldn't get out because her prosthetic got stuck in, and 3 different teams had to come in. So what this bill will allow is the management of resources and using volunteers, all in the service of safety.
Okay, additional, any questions for our final in-person witness here? Seeing none, thank you. We do have 2 favorable virtual witnesses, Memoria, Kimberly Egan and Robert Stanton. I'm sorry, Robert Scranton. Ms. Egan, you're signed up. You're actually formally part of the panel here, and you're signed up favorable, and you'll have up to 2 minutes to testify. So, Ms. Egan, why don't you proceed? Can you hear me? Ms. Egan, can you hear? Okay, Ms. Egan, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you start? You've got 2 minutes, and you're straight favorable on the bill.
Yes, I'm favorable. My name is Kim Egan. Some of you may know me as the current president of the Maryland Horse Council, but I'm testifying today as a neighbor of the wildlands. I live across the road from part of it. And the key to this bill is indeed the user agreement. There are many groups of volunteers, some groups that contain many volunteers that are willing and able to help keep the safety access open. And without having a user agreement is the thing that is currently holding it up. I don't know why, but that's the point of this bill. Secondly, the safety risk is real. Others have said, but I just want to tell you my personal experience. A couple summers ago, there was a fire in the wildlands, pertinent to the wildlands. And in order to get to the fire, to help fight the fire, the first responders had to use a few trails that had been cleared by volunteers some years prior, and that was the only way to get in there. And this fire could be seen from my house. It was alarming. It was a stressful day. This is not just an academic discussion. And lastly, I'm sure many of you heard Senator Ferguson on the Senate floor today say that Moody's wildfire risk report has Maryland ranked as #1 right now. So this is, again, it's not academic. The wildlands are nearby various residential communities and many farms, and we just want to make sure that we can get in there and keep people safe.
Okay, any questions for Ms. Egan? Okay, any questions for Ms. Egan? Seeing none, we're going to go next to Mr. Scranton. Mr. Scranton, you have up to 2 minutes, signed up favorable.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, sir, so you can proceed.
Okay. I'm a Howard County resident. I live at 18950 Windsor Forest Road in Mount Airy in the western part of the county. I'm an avid sportsman, and I enjoy hunting, fishing, hiking, and horseback riding. I serve as the vice president of the Howard County Iron Bridge Hounds, which is a horseback riding club located in Howard County. My duties include directing paid staff and volunteers for trail clearing on both private and public lands. HCIBH staff and volunteers have successfully assisted in the maintenance of the trails throughout the Patuxent State Park, including the wildlands, for over 30 years. I'm here today in support of amendments to the current law that would allow for the use of motorized and mechanized equipment to maintain trails throughout the Patuxent Park wildlands, the use of which is already allowed throughout other parts of the park. I am also in support of allowing organizations to utilize certified volunteers to assist DNR in the maintenance of the trails in the wildlands. Those efforts would continue to be managed through use agreements with various organizations. Comar states the wildlands are for passive recreation such as hiking, hunting, fishing, birdwatching, horseback riding, and nature interpretation. When the trails are not maintained and not safely accessible for residents, the purpose of the wildlands cannot be fulfilled. DNR's own published trail maps identify trails within the wildlands that the general public is utilizing for hiking and other various activities. They are traveling deep into the wildlands where accidents and emergency situations do occur. The trails need to remain accessible for first responders in the event of an emergency. I personally assisted in the rescue of a lost and disoriented hunter, guiding first responders from Howard County Police and Lisbon Fire Company on foot to his last known location. The lost hunter was fine, but had this been a more serious incident, without better access, it could have been life-threatening. DNR has indicated it is limited on staff and funding. Volunteers can fill that gap. We have both staff and volunteers that have been certified through DNR and are ready and willing to help. We have others also willing to sign up and be trained and certified that are willing to help. Utilization of volunteers is a win for the state and DNR by easing the workload and financial burden. This is a win for residents who will be able to use the park as it is intended, and a win for volunteers who will take pride in helping to preserve a valuable public resource.
Mr. Scranton, if you could wrap up.
Sure. It is simply not realistic or feasible to believe the trails will be maintained to provide safe access without the use of the mechanized equipment. We certainly appreciate the efforts of DNR, and we'll continue to work with them in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. We've got Senator Augustine with a question.
Yeah, I mean, this is just kind of across the board. I mean, just because of what the last person was saying, that just, it's not my understanding of the wildlands. And I would just, can we just get the clearer sort of explanation, if it's okay, Mr. Chair? DNR would probably be the best to really just do that. That's not my understanding.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Right, I do want to stress that these are wildlands, and as I mentioned, there's always a risk, there's an inherent risk when you're out in nature like that, and especially in a wildland area. They are designed to be left alone, essentially. So again, it's threading that needle between maintaining the integrity of the wildland while also ensuring safe access for emergency purposes. And so that's where we're headed with this.
No, I appreciate that, but I just wanted to make it clear for the committee that the wildlands are the intent is for them to be natural habitat, undisturbed over a period of time. Would that be accurate? That's
Yes,
really what is the intent? Like you said, a fallen tree is a part of a natural forest. I mean, it just is that way. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I just wanted that for clarification for us. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for any of the witnesses on the bill? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 968. We're going to bring Senator Lamb up for the final two bills on behalf of the Howard County Senators. We're going to start with Senate Bill 966, and we've got Joel Horowitz on the line virtually. Do you want to just bring him in? I know he's not going to be on camera, but let's bring him on as well. Senator Lamb, you can proceed. Senate Bill 966 on behalf of the Senator.
So thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the Senate EEE Committee, Clarence Lamb, Senator District 12 here on behalf of the Howard County delegation as the chair. Senate Bill 966 deals with ambient air quality permits, specifically to Howard County. This is a local bill. There was a high-profile case of community opposition to a potential issuance of an air quality permit for a facility that was researching different types of plastics recycling near a residential location. The community experience that we have seen in Howard County highlighted several issues with our current air quality permit process. One, currently many individuals and residents are not aware of how to request information for proposed permits. So this bill requests that the delegation be included in that process so that we can help ensure that our constituents are able to have an informational meeting about projects that are occurring near them or permit applications that might be occurring near them. Secondly, the air quality permit applicants need a letter from their county, local county, confirming that they're complying with local zoning regulations. Counties oftentimes will send those letters in without necessarily a broad level of community input. And so this bill would require Howard County to have a public hearing before the county issues a zoning approval letter. With the current case that's playing out in Howard County, residents are particularly displeased because the company that was applying for the permit used all of their own used to own all of the land that's below this neighborhood. And so a couple years ago, this land was sold off to a developer. Houses were built on it. It is right up and adjacent to the property line of this company, which is engaging in some research regarding plastics recycling. The residents that live in that neighborhood feel like they were not informed, and it was a little bit misleading to what they were conveyed when they first bought property there. So the bill requires an annual air quality reporting to homeowners associations that are near this project, so they can be aware of any pollution related issues that might stem from the requested permit. The bill also, as drafted, includes a tax credit for those property owners. The delegation has requested an amendment to remove that. Certainly recognize that the Maryland Department of Environment has concerns about the bill. We're certainly open to ongoing conversations with the department, and that will continue to occur. So in the meantime, at least wanted to bring this bill forward. We're going to continue to have conversations with the department. This is a local county bill. That's the bill.
Okay, before we go to a virtual witness, any questions for Senator Lamb?
One question.
Yes, Senator Watson.
Thank you, Senator Lamb. Just in response to the Maryland Asphalt Association, is that an entity that's within a mile from existing residential?
Not that I'm aware of, but we can check on that. I don't think, I think there's some concerns among some other industries within Howard County that might be requesting similar permits that might fall under this, and that's why you're seeing some of the concern in the bill folder.
So based on this bill, if an entity is within a certain geographical distance from a residential area, their air quality would be tested periodically, reported back, and if it is above a certain threshold, what happens?
If it's above a certain threshold, it just has to be reported. It would be reported by MDE. Yes, if it falls within the geographic distance of, if there are neighborhoods that fall within the geographic distance of the permit requester, then yes, there would be air quality testing that would take place.
Would they have to do any remediation if they fall out of bounds?
That's not.
This is just a reporting bill? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Senator Augustine.
So, Senator, that work would be done by MDE? Is that what you're saying?
The air quality testing, I think, would be done by MDE.
Okay, that's what I thought. But we don't have anything in here from MDE? Did you all talk to MDE?
We did talk to MDE. Okay. MDE has been part of this discussion for that specific development for quite a while. We are still having conversations with MDE to try to address some of their concerns.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Senator.
Any additional questions for Senator Lamb? Okay, seeing none, thank you. Do we have Do we have our witness, Joel Horowitz? Okay, signed up favorable with amendments. Mr. Horowitz, can you hear me?
Yes, Chairman.
Okay, you've got up to 2 minutes. You're signed up favorable with amendments, and so you can proceed and describe what amendments you want to put on this bill.
All right. Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Joel Hurwitz. I live in Senator Lamb's District 12 in Howard County. I participated in the aforementioned project from almost the beginning, though I don't live near it. I observed, as the senator alluded to, that there were a couple of problems, and the main language I'd like to beef up is page 3, lines 18 through 19, because the company basically the county cut and pasted the letter dealing with the zoning that the company provided, and it was processed by a low-level Department of Planning and Zoning employee. It missed a number of things like the non-conforming use that many of us believe is an issue, and talked about conditional uses, which was not an issue because that's what the company wrote. Because it didn't go to the director of the department, I'm not sure that she ever saw it before it was sent out. So that was one problem. The other is notification to the people who live most adjacent to it. And I've suggested during the summer that part of the pre-submission community meeting process that Howard County uses could be roped into this either at the county level or the state level. So I wanted more focus on lines 18 to 19. And I've also been told that there's an amendment to get rid of the language that implies in the page 2, I believe, or that the delegation could veto having a community meeting if members of the public wanted one. There's also on lines 22 on page 3, it talks about if the department provide the documentation. Well, what if they don't? It's not entirely clear if the members of the public have requested it. So again, I'd like to beef up the language and focus it more, as the senator said, having discussions on it.
Thank you. Any questions for our virtual witness, Mr. Horowitz? Okay, thank you. That concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 966, which brings us to our final bill for today, Senate Bill 970. Senator Lamb, on behalf of the Howard County Senators, so you can proceed, and then we'll go back to Mr. Horowitz, who's on the virtual as well on this one, although this one he has signed up unfavorable, just for your information. So, Senator Lamb, 970.
Great. Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the EEE Committee, Senator Clarence Lamb, District 12, here to present SB 970 on behalf of the Howard County delegation as the chair. This is in regards to parking space requirements for new construction or new development. We have had an issue with concerns about pedestrian deaths in many areas of the county, particularly along the Route 1 corridor in Howard County, where there have been several pedestrian deaths in Elk Ridge. And this really came to light because the county continues to have a goal of being able to have a reduction in pedestrian deaths. This is a goal of the county government, the county executive, and many other efforts in Howard County as well to reduce the number of pedestrian deaths. At the same time, as we were trying to address pedestrian deaths along Route 1 in Elk Ridge, we recognized that the state has very little funding left to engage in pedestrian improvements along Route 1, which is maintained by the state. And so this is an effort to bring all of those together to give the county the ability to be able to create some offsets when it comes to parking requirements if developers engage in pedestrian infrastructure improvements, basically saying that if new development is going on and they engage in certain pedestrian infrastructure improvements in the county, that allows the county to reduce some of the parking space requirements in an effort to have more people walk and less people drive, also increase the safety of our roads, and also put the burden of some of this on the developers who are the ones who oftentimes will generate the increased traffic in some of these areas. So this is an effort to bring all of that together, and local bill happy to answer any questions about this bill.
Okay, any questions for Senator Lamb? Okay, seeing none, we're going to take our virtual witness, Joel Horwitz, who signed up unfavorable. Mr. Horwitz, you back in the queue here?
I'm clear, thank you.
Okay, you're signed up again unfavorable, and you have up to 2 minutes, so you can start.
Thank you again. As I said, I live in Howard County in District 12. As Senator Lamb is aware, as I testified at the delegation hearing, I believe this law is unconstitutional under the Express Powers Act violation of the Maryland Constitution. As the senator just mentioned, it deals with the safety and welfare. As I put in my written testimony, a county has zoning and planning authority in the Express Powers Act to deal with protecting the health, public safety, health, welfare, and morals and welfare. Therefore, it's clearly a authority for Howard County under its zoning and planning delegation. As I pointed out, there's a two-step process from the Maryland Supreme Court that one, whether it's a public local law, which just said it was, and addresses a topic covered by the Express Powers Act, which I just also said. The fiscal analysis further proves it in its detailed how things would work, that this is a law that really deals with Howard County's Department of Planning and Zoning and Howard County's planning law, and therefore, again, illustrates how it violates Express Powers Act. As my friend Senator Katie Hester might recall from several sessions ago, I submitted similar objections to the Housing Opportunities Trust Fund bill, along with Councilman Deb Young. Unfortunately, the Attorney General's analysis was on a totally unrelated point. I really find it unfortunate that I have found that for the last 3 decades, the Howard County delegation continues to micromanage Howard County and continually violates the Express Powers Act and the county's home rule powers nearly every session, one way or another. So again, for those reasons, this is a county bill, and the senator had a similar bill. It's now going to be addressed at the county level. The county should be addressing these parking problems under our zoning regulations.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Horwitz? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Lamb. Thank you, Mr. Horwitz. That concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 970, concludes our bill hearings for today. Folks, if you want to come back here, let's say about 3 o'clock, I'd like to get Delegate Attar back here. She's doing some testimony and some other (20 to 3, 20 minutes, try to come back.